Have you ever wondered what it would be like to travel 2,000 miles across this great country, only to find that the man who promised you a new life was already in his grave? In 1873, a refined widow named Constance Merriweather left everything she knew in Boston, boarded a train heading west with nothing but two trunks and a faded photograph, believing she was about to marry a prosperous cattle rancher named Samuel Brennan in the Colorado Territory. But when she stepped off that dusty stagecoach in Silver Creek, it wasn't Samuel waiting for her at the station. It was his younger brother, Jacob, a man hardened by the frontier, scarred by his own losses, and absolutely furious that his late brother had arranged this marriage without telling a soul. What happened next would change both their lives forever, in ways neither of them could have imagined. If you love stories about courage, second chances, and finding love when you least expect it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like, because Constance and Jacob's journey is one you won't want to miss. The stagecoach rattled into Silver Creek on a Tuesday afternoon in late September, dust swirling behind it like a brown curtain closing on Constance Merriweather's old life, and she pressed her gloved hand against the window, searching the small crowd gathered at the station for a face that matched the photograph tucked inside her reticule. Samuel Brennan, the man she'd corresponded with for 6 months, had kind eyes in that photograph, a strong jaw, and he'd written letters that spoke of loneliness and hope, of a ranch that needed a woman's touch, of children he dreamed of having before it was too late. Constance understood that loneliness. Her own husband had died 3 years prior, leaving her with nothing but debts and the cold charity of her sister's household in Boston, where she was reminded daily that she was a burden, an extra mouth to feed, a woman past her prime with no prospects. So when she saw Samuel's advertisement in the matrimonial news, something stirred in her heart, and his letters had been thoughtful, respectful, promising partnership rather than passion, which at 38 seemed like exactly what she needed. The stage lurched to a stop, and the driver opened the door, offering his hand. "Constance, my dear, this is your stop. Silver Creek," he said with a tobacco-stained smile. She stepped down onto the wooden platform, her traveling dress wrinkled from days of journey, her dark hair struggling to stay pinned beneath her hat, and she scanned the faces again, looking for Samuel. But it was a different man who stepped forward, tall and broad-shouldered, younger than Samuel by perhaps 10 years, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of a winter sky, cold and unwelcoming. "You'd be Miss Merriweather," he said. Not a question, just a flat statement. "Yes, I am," she replied, straightening her spine the way her mother had taught her. Is Mr. Brennan unable to meet me himself?" The man removed his hat, revealing dark hair that needed cutting, and something flickered across his face, something that looked like pain, or anger, or both. "I'm Jacob Brennan, Samuel's brother, and I'm afraid—" He paused, his jaw working. "I'm afraid Samuel passed 2 weeks ago. Fever took him quick. He was gone in 3 days." The world seemed to tilt beneath Constance's feet, and she gripped her bag tighter, feeling the eyes of the townspeople on her, watching this drama unfold like it was entertainment laid on for their amusement. "I see," she managed, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. I'm very sorry for your loss." Jacob's eyes narrowed. Or are you just sorry your meal ticket died before you could get your hooks in him?" The cruelty of it struck her like a slap, and Constance felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she would not give this man, this stranger, the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "I beg your pardon," she said. her voice ice. "But I traveled 2,000 miles in good faith. Your brother and I had an arrangement, a respectable arrangement. And I will not stand here and be insulted by someone who knows nothing about me or my circumstances." Something shifted in Jacob's expression. Surprise, maybe, that this Eastern woman had a backbone. "Look," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't know Samuel had sent for a bride. He never told me, never told anyone. And now you're here, and he's in the ground, and I don't know what the hell to do with you." "With me?" Constance repeated, "as if I'm a piece of luggage that's been misdelivered." A woman from the crowd stepped forward then, older, with kind eyes and flour on her apron. "Martha Yates," she said, extending her hand. "I run the boarding house, and you look like you could use a hot meal and a place to sit down. Mr. Brennan, you can sort this out like civilized people once the ladies had a chance to catch her breath." Jacob nodded curtly. "Fine, I'll come by this evening. We'll talk." And he turned and walked away, leaving Constance standing there with her trunks and her shattered dreams, in a town that was supposed to be her new home, with a man who clearly wished she'd never come at all. As Martha led her toward the boarding house, Constance looked back once and saw Jacob standing by a horse, staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, and she wondered, not for the first time that day, what on earth she was going to do now. Jacob Brennan sat in the dimness of his brother's house that evening, the house that was now his, running his thumb along the edge of a worn envelope, one of dozens he'd found in Samuel's desk drawer, all addressed to Miss Constance Merriweather, Boston, Massachusetts. He'd read 3 of them before his stomach turned. Samuel writing about hope and fresh starts, about how a good woman could make a house a home, about growing old with someone to talk to over morning coffee. His brother had been lonely. Jacob knew that. They'd both been lonely since their parents passed, and Samuel's first wife died in childbirth 10 years back, taking the baby with her. But Samuel had never said a word about sending for a mail-order bride, never breathed a hint of it, and now Jacob was left to clean up the mess. Except, when he closed his eyes, he didn't see a mess. He saw the way Constance Merriweather had stood on that platform, spine straight as a lodgepole pine, facing down his rudeness with a dignity that shamed him, even if he'd never admitted out loud. She wasn't what he'd expected, not some desperate young girl looking to trap a man with property. She was closer to his own age, handsome in a way that had nothing to do with girlish prettiness, and everything to do with character written in the lines around her eyes. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts, and he opened it to find Pastor Williams standing there, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. "Jacob," the pastor said, "I heard about Miss Merriweather's arrival. The whole town's heard by now. And I thought we should talk about what's to be done. What's to be done is I'll pay her passage back to Boston," Jacob said, stepping aside to let the man in. "It's the decent thing." "Is it, though?" Pastor Williams asked, settling into a chair. "From what Martha tells me, the woman's got no family to speak of. Came west because she had nothing left back east. You send her back. You're sending her to what exactly?" Jacob poured 2 glasses of whiskey, slid one across the table. "That's not my problem. Samuel created this situation, not me. Samuel's dead, Jacob," the pastor said quietly, "and you're the one still breathing, still in a position to do right by your brother's word." "My brother's word?" Jacob's voice rose. "He made promises without telling me, brought a woman out here under false pretenses. And now I'm supposed to what? Marry her myself? Honor an arrangement I never agreed to? The pastor took a long drink, then met Jacob's eyes. Your brother loved you. You know that. Everything he did for this ranch, he did thinking you two would run it together, build it into something that would last. And maybe, just maybe, he thought you needed someone too, but was too stubborn to do anything about it yourself. Jacob slammed his glass down. I don't need anyone. Everyone needs someone. Jacob. Everyone. The pastor stood. I'm not saying you have to marry the woman, but you could at least offer her a choice. She could work at the ranch, earn her keep. Housekeeper, maybe. Give her time to figure out what she wants to do. Could be she'll choose to leave on her own. Could be something else happens. But sending her back right away, after she came all this way, that's cruel. And you're not a cruel man. After the pastor left, Jacob sat alone with the letters, with the weight of obligation pressing on his shoulders like a 100-pound saddle, and he thought about his brother, about promises and duty, about the fact that Samuel had died believing Constance was coming, believing he was doing something good. Finally, as the clock struck 8, Jacob grabbed his coat and headed for the boarding house, his jaw set, his mind made up about what he'd offer, even if he hated every bit of it. Martha answered the door, showed him to the small parlor where Constance sat with a cup of tea, still wearing her traveling dress, looking tired but composed, and when she saw him, she stood, folding her hands in front of her like she was bracing for bad news. Miss Merriweather, he began, taking off his hat. I came to apologize. What I said earlier, at the station, it was uncalled for. You didn't deserve that. She nodded slowly, studying him. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Apology accepted, and I came to make you an offer. He continued, I'll pay your passage back to Boston, with extra for your trouble. You can leave as soon as the next stage runs. Or, he paused, hating what he was about to say. Or, you can stay, work as housekeeper at the ranch, room and board plus wages, until you decide what you want to do next. No obligations, no expectations, just honest work. Constance was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face. Why would you do that? She asked. You made it clear you don't want me here. Because, Jacob said, and the words came harder than he expected, because my brother gave you his word, and a Brennan's word means something, even when the Brennan who gave it is dead. She sat back down, her hands trembling slightly as she set down her teacup. I have no money, Mr. Brennan. I used everything I had to come here, and I have no home to return to, no family who wants me. So your offer of honest work, it's more than generous. It's a lifeline, and I accept. Jacob nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and dread. You start Monday. I'll send a wagon for your things. And Miss Merriweather, this is a business arrangement. Nothing more. I want to be clear about that. Crystal clear. Mr. Brennan. She replied, and I assure you, I have no designs on you whatsoever. I came here for a partnership, not a romance, and that hasn't changed. Good, he said. Then we understand each other. But as he walked back to his horse through the cool Colorado night, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a decision that was going to change his life in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. And whether that change would be for better or worse, only time would tell. Monday morning arrived cold and clear, frost glittering on the scrub grass like scattered diamonds, and Constance stood on the porch of the boarding house with her 2 trunks beside her, watching the road for Jacob Brennan's wagon. She'd spent the weekend trying not to think too hard about what she was doing, trying not to calculate how many ways this arrangement could go wrong. A woman alone on a ranch with a man who clearly resented her presence. No chaperone. No protection except his word that this was purely business. But what choice did she have? Really, pride was a luxury she could no longer afford, and at least honest work was something she understood, something she could do well. The wagon appeared around the bend, driven not by Jacob, but by a grizzled older man with a face like weathered leather and eyes that twinkled with curiosity. "Miss Merriweather," he called out, pulling the horses to a stop. "Name's Charlie Dawson. I'm the foreman at the Brennan Ranch. Mr. Jacob sent me to fetch you and your things." Constance smiled, grateful for the friendly face. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Dawson. Just Charlie." "Ma'am," he said, climbing down to help with her trunks. "And, if you don't mind me saying, you're causing quite a stir in Silver Creek. Nobody can remember the last time anything this interesting happened around here." "I'm sure they'll find something else to talk about soon enough," Constance replied, settling onto the wagon seat beside him. Charlie laughed, started the horses moving. "Don't count on it, ma'am. This is a small town, and Jacob Brennan taking in his dead brother's mail-order bride. Well, that's the kind of story that'll be told for years." As they rode, Charlie filled the silence with talk about the ranch. 3,000 acres of grazing land, 200 head of cattle, a main house that Samuel built 15 years ago, a bunkhouse for the hands, and challenges with water rights that had the Brennan brothers feuding with their neighbor, a man named Hackett, for the better part of 3 years. "Jacob's a good man," Charlie said suddenly, his tone more serious, hard, but good. "Lost a lot in his life. His parents, his brother, nearly lost the ranch twice to drought and rustlers. Makes a man careful about letting people in. But underneath all that stone, there's still a heart beating." Constance appreciated the warning, or perhaps it was encouragement. She couldn't quite tell. The ranch came into view around noon, and Constance's breath caught despite herself. It was beautiful in a stark, wild way, mountains rising in the distance like sleeping giants, the house itself larger than she'd expected. 2 stories of solid timber with a wide porch and windows that caught the sunlight. Jacob was in the corral working with a horse, his shirt sleeves rolled up despite the cold, and he looked up when the wagon approached, wiping sweat from his brow with his forearm. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just nodded acknowledgement and went back to his work, leaving Charlie to help Constance down and show her inside. The house was, well, it was exactly what you'd expect from 2 men living alone, clean enough but utterly devoid of comfort. No curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floors, furniture that was functional and nothing more. And in the kitchen, dishes stacked in the basin and a layer of dust on every surface that wasn't used for eating or sleeping. "Your room's upstairs," Charlie said. "First door on the right. It was Samuel's room. Jacob moved his things out yesterday. And ma'am, Jacob asked me to tell you that he takes his meals at 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening, and he expects the house kept clean, the cooking done proper, and the laundry managed on Tuesdays." Constance nodded, taking it all in. "Is there anything else I should know?" Charlie scratched his beard. "Well, Jacob's not much for talking, especially first thing in the morning, and he's got a temper when things don't go right, but he's never raised a hand to anyone who didn't deserve it. And he pays fair wages on time, which is more than most ranchers around here can say." After Charlie left, Constance climbed the stairs to her new room, a simple space with a bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the mountains. And she allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to sit on that bed and wonder what her life had become before she stood up, pinned her hair back, and went downstairs to start earning her keep. The kitchen was her first battlefield, and she attacked it with the same determination that had gotten her through widowhood and poverty, scrubbing counters, washing dishes, taking stock of the pantry, which was surprisingly well stocked but poorly organized. By 4 o'clock, she had bread rising and a stew simmering, and by 5:30, she was setting the table for 2. Jacob came in at 6 exactly, his boots left at the door, his hands and face freshly washed, and he stopped short when he saw the table actually set with napkins and everything in its proper place, the smell of fresh bread filling the room. He sat down without a word, and Constance served the stew, the bread, poured coffee, then took her own seat across from him. They ate in silence for several minutes, the only sound the scrape of spoons against bowls, until finally Jacob spoke. "This is good," he said, not looking at her. "The bread especially." "Thank you," Constance replied. "My mother taught me. She believed a well-set table was a sign of civilization, no matter where you found yourself." "Samuel would have liked that," Jacob said quietly, and then, as if he'd revealed too much, he stood abruptly. "I've got work in the barn. I'll be in late. Don't wait up." And he was gone, leaving Constance alone with the dishes and the understanding that this was how it would be. Careful distance, polite formality, 2 people sharing a space but not a life. But as she washed the dishes and banked the fire for the night, Constance found herself thinking about the way Jacob had said his brother's name, the grief still raw in his voice, and she wondered if maybe, just maybe, they had more in common than either of them wanted to admit. 2 people trying to survive their losses, trying to build something from the rubble of broken dreams, even if they were doing it alone, under the same roof. 3 weeks passed like water over stones, steady and unchanging. Constance fell into the rhythm of ranch life, rising before dawn to start the coffee, preparing breakfast while the sky turned from black to gray to gold, cleaning and mending and cooking and managing a household that had forgotten what it meant to be a home. Jacob remained distant, polite but cold. He thanked her for meals, paid her wages on time, and otherwise treated her like a piece of furniture, useful but unremarkable. They rarely spoke beyond necessities. Past the salt, the fence on the south pasture needs mending. There's a storm coming in, but Constance noticed things. The way he favored his left leg on cold mornings. An old injury he never mentioned. The way he read by lamplight every evening, always books about animal husbandry or land management, never stories. The way he stood on the porch, sometimes at sunset, staring at the mountains with an expression so lonely it made her chest ache. She noticed, too, that he worked himself nearly to death, up before her, to bed long after, driving himself and his men hard, as if stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and feeling was something Jacob Brennan couldn't afford. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything shifted. Constance was hanging laundry on the line behind the house, her hands red from the cold water, when she heard shouting from the direction of the north pasture. She shaded her eyes and saw riders approaching, 3 men on horseback, and even from a distance she could sense the tension, the threat. Jacob emerged from the barn, Charlie and 2 other ranch hands flanking him, and Constance felt her pulse quicken as the riders came closer. The man in front was tall and heavy-set, with a thick beard, and eyes like chips of flint. "Brennan," the man called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "We need to talk about the water situation. There's nothing to talk about." "Hackett," Jacob replied, his hand resting casually near the rifle leaning against the barn door. "The water rights are settled. Have been for 2 years. Creek flows through my land first. That's the law." "The law?" Hackett spat. "The law says I got cattle dying of thirst while your herd drinks their fill. That don't seem right to me." "What seems right to you and what is right are 2 different things," Jacob said, his voice steady but hard. "You knew the situation when you bought that land. You knew the creek flows north to south. You want to take it up with a judge. Go ahead, but you're not diverting water off my property." Hackett's eyes narrowed. Then his gaze shifted, landing on Constance where she stood frozen by the laundry line, and a slow smile spread across his face, a smile that made her skin crawl. "Well now," he said, "I heard rumors you'd taken in Samuel's mail-order bride. Didn't believe it, but here she is. Pretty thing too. Must get lonely for her. You out working all day. Her stuck in that big house all alone." Jacob's whole body went rigid. "You got business with me, Hackett. You talk to me. You don't look at her. You don't talk about her. You don't even think about her. We clear?" The threat in his voice was unmistakable, and Constance saw Charlie's hand move toward his own weapon, the air suddenly thick with the possibility of violence. Hackett raised his hands in mock surrender. "No offense meant, just making conversation, but you might want to remember, Brennan, that things can happen on a ranch this far from town. Accidents, fires, people getting hurt. Be a shame if you couldn't protect what's yours." "That's enough," Jacob said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You've said your piece. Now get off my land before I have you removed." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Hackett yanked his horse's head around. "We'll be back," he said, "and next time maybe we won't be so friendly." The 3 men rode off, leaving a cloud of dust and tension in their wake, and Jacob stood there until they were out of sight, his jaw clenched so tight Constance could see the muscle jumping. Then he turned, saw her still standing there, and something in his expression shifted, concern maybe, or anger that she'd been exposed to this. "Get inside," he said, not harshly but firmly, "and stay away from the windows." Constance bristled. "I'm not a child to be ordered about. Mr. Brennan. No, you're a woman alone on a ranch that just got threatened by a man who doesn't play by any rules but his own," Jacob shot back. "And until I know what he's planning, you need to be careful. Now please, get inside." The please softened it, barely, and Constance gathered the half-hung laundry and went into the house. But she watched through the kitchen window as Jacob and Charlie talked in low, urgent voices, as the other hands were sent to check the fences and the cattle, as Jacob finally came inside looking 10 years older than he had that morning. He poured himself a whiskey, drank it in one swallow, then poured another. "Should I be worried?" Constance asked quietly from the doorway. Jacob turned a tender. First time since she'd arrived, he really looked at her, not past her, not through her, but at her. "Hackett's a bully and a cheat," he said. "Been trying to force me to sell him water rights for 3 years. But he's never made threats like that before, never brought it to my doorstep, and he's never—" Jacob paused. "He's never noticed there was a woman here before. You think he'd hurt me to get to you?" "I don't know," Jacob admitted, "and that's what worries me. I don't know what he's capable of, and I don't—" He stopped himself, ran a hand through his hair. "I don't want you caught in the middle of something that's got nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me." Constance said, stepping into the room. "I live here now. This is my home too, whether you like it or not." Jacob stared at her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "This isn't your fight. Maybe not. But I'm not helpless. And I'm not going to hide in the house like a scared rabbit. So if there's going to be trouble, you might as well tell me what to expect." And so he did, standing there in the fading afternoon light. Jacob told her about the water war, about Hackett's attempts to sabotage the ranch, about the cattle that had gone missing and the fences that had been cut, about the way this land could turn men hard and desperate, and about his fear that he'd brought her into a situation he couldn't protect her from. When he finished, Constance walked to the cabinet, pulled out 2 clean glasses, and poured them each a whiskey. Then she raised hers in a toast to unexpected battles, she said, and to facing them with our eyes open. Jacob touched his glass to hers, the faintest hint of respect, maybe even admiration, crossing his face, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Constance felt like maybe, just maybe, they were becoming something other than strangers under the same roof. Maybe they were becoming allies, and that, she thought, was a start. The threat from Hackett hung over the ranch like a storm cloud that wouldn't break. Jacob doubled the night watch, kept the hands closer to the main house, and insisted that Constance stay within sight of the buildings during the day. She chafed at the restrictions, but she understood them, and she found ways to make herself useful that didn't involve wandering the open range. She organized the ranch records that Samuel had kept, meticulously cataloging livestock, expenses, and water usage in a way that might prove valuable if the dispute ever went to court. She mended harnesses and work clothes, and she began teaching young Tommy, the youngest ranch hand, to read in the evenings after supper. Jacob noticed, though he said nothing at first, just watched from his chair as Constance patiently sounded out words with the 19-year-old who'd never had a day of schooling in his life. Watched as Tommy's face lit up when he finally made it through a whole sentence without help. One evening, after Tommy had left for the bunkhouse, Jacob spoke up from his corner. "That's a kind thing you're doing," he said, his voice quiet. Constance looked up from the book she was reading. "It costs me nothing but time, and he's eager to learn. It seems wasteful not to help." "My mother taught me to read," Jacob said, and it was the first truly personal thing he'd shared. "She was a school teacher back in Ohio before she married my father. Used to say that reading was the difference between living one life and living 1,000. She was right," Constance replied. And then, carefully, "Did she teach Samuel too?" Jacob nodded, his eyes distant. "Samuel was the better student, more patient. I always wanted to be outside, doing things. But Samuel, he'd sit for hours with a book. He was the one who figured out how to manage this ranch properly, kept records, planned ahead. I just worked." There was grief in his voice, raw and unhealed, and Constance felt something shift in her chest. "You miss him terribly," she said softly. "Every damn day," Jacob admitted. Then he stood abruptly, as if he'd revealed too much. "I should check on the horses." But the next evening, he came in earlier, sat at the table while Constance and Tommy worked through their lesson, and eventually he started helping, filling in details about ranch life when Tommy struggled with words like pasture and bridle. His voice gentle in a way Constance had never heard before. The walls were coming down, slowly, like ice melting in spring, too slow to see but impossible to stop. A week later, Constance woke to find the first snow of the season falling, soft and silent, blanketing the world in white. She came downstairs to start breakfast and found Jacob already in the kitchen, coffee made, standing at the window watching the snow with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said, coming to stand beside him. "And deadly." Jacob replied, "We've got cattle in the high pasture. If this keeps up, we'll need to bring them down or we'll lose them, and the roads to town will be impassable by nightfall." "What do you need me to do?" Constance asked. He turned to look at her, surprise flickering across his face. "You've done ranch work before?" "No, but I can learn, and I can follow instructions, and I'm stronger than I look." Jacob studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Dress warm. We ride in 20 minutes. And so Constance found herself on horseback for the first time in 15 years, bundled in every warm thing she owned, riding beside Jacob and Charlie and 3 other hands up into the hills where the cattle were already huddled against the wind, confused and lowing. Jacob put her on the easy work, riding behind the herd to keep the stragglers moving, while the men did the harder job of leading and flanking. But even the easy work was bone-chilling, exhausting, her hands numb inside her glove, her face stinging from the wind-driven snow. Hours passed, the world reduced to white and gray and the dark shapes of cattle moving ahead of her. And just when Constance thought she might actually freeze to death in the saddle, they crested the final ridge and saw the ranch below, the barn doors open and waiting. They got the cattle secured just as full dark fell, and Constance practically fell off her horse, her legs shaking, her whole body trembling with cold and exhaustion. Jacob was there, catching her elbow, steadying her, his face creased with concern. "You all right?" he asked. "Fine," she managed through chattering teeth. "Just very cold." He half carried her to the house, sat her by the stove while he built up the fire, then pressed a cup of hot coffee into her hands, his own fingers brushing hers, and for a moment they just looked at each other, something unspoken passing between them. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "Ride out in the snow. Risk yourself for cattle that aren't even yours. They're yours." Constance replied, "And this is my home now, that makes them mine too, in a way." Jacob's expression softened, something almost tender in his eyes. "You did good today, real good, and I'm grateful." That night, after a late supper, after the hands had been fed and sent to warm bunks, Jacob lingered at the table instead of disappearing to the barn or his room. "Constance," he said, and it was the first time he'd used her given name. "I need to tell you something about Samuel, about why he sent for you." She waited, her heart suddenly beating faster. Samuel knew he was sick. Jacob continued. "The doctor told him months before that his heart was failing, that he didn't have long, and he made me promise, made me swear, that I'd keep this ranch going, that I wouldn't give up on it. But I think he also knew I was giving up on everything else, on living, not just surviving. And maybe he thought bringing you here would force me to remember how to be human again." Tears pricked at Constance's eyes. "That's a heavy burden to carry," she said, "for both of us." "I know. And I'm sorry," Jacob said. "I'm sorry you got caught up in my brother's matchmaking from beyond the grave. I'm sorry I've been cold to you. And I'm sorry that being here has put you in danger from Hackett. You deserved better than all of this." Constance reached across the table, placed her hand over his. "Maybe," she said, "or maybe I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't know yet, but I do know that today, riding through that snow, helping save those cattle, I felt more alive than I have in years. So perhaps your brother knew what he was doing after all." Jacob looked down at their hands, hers small and pale against his work-roughened skin, and he didn't pull away, didn't retreat behind his walls. Instead, he turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. "I'm glad you're here," he said, and the words sounded like they'd been dragged up from somewhere deep, somewhere he usually kept locked away. "I didn't want to be, but I am." And Constance smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "I'm glad I'm here too." Jacob Brennan, even if neither of us planned for it. They sat like that for a long while, hands linked across the table, the fire crackling, the snow falling outside, two wounded people finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence, and though neither of them said it out loud, both of them felt it. The first fragile stirrings of something that might, someday, become love. Winter settled over Silver Creek like a thick blanket, turning the ranch into an island of warmth in a sea of white. The work continued, feeding cattle, breaking ice on water troughs, keeping paths clear, but the long evenings grew longer, and the space between Jacob and Constance grew smaller. They talked now, really talked, about his childhood on the ranch, about her life in Boston, about the dreams they'd both buried along with their losses, about books and ideas, and the way the light looked on the mountains at sunrise. Jacob showed her how to shoot, standing behind her in the yard, his hands steadying hers on the rifle, his breath warm against her ear as he murmured instructions. And Constance tried to ignore the way her heart raced at his closeness, tried to tell herself it was just gratitude, just friendship. But she knew better, and so did he. It was Charlie who finally said something, cornering Jacob in the barn one February morning while they were checking on a mare about to foal. "You gonna do something about that woman, or you gonna let this thing between you two just hang in the air forever?" Charlie asked, his tone gruff but not unkind. "There's nothing between us," Jacob said, not meeting his eyes. "She works here, that's all." Charlie snorted. "Boy, I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper, and I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at her, and she looks at you the same way. So either you're both blind, or you're both too stubborn to admit what's plain as day. She came here for Samuel," Jacob said quietly. "Not for me." What kind of man would I be, taking advantage of a situation like that? "What kind of man?" Charlie repeated. "The kind who deserves happiness, the kind who's been alone too damn long, the kind whose brother probably planned this exact thing. You think Samuel didn't know what he was doing, bringing a woman like that to this ranch, knowing you'd be the one here when she arrived?" Jacob's hands stilled on the rope he was coiling. "You think he meant for this?" "I think Samuel loved you and wanted you to have what he lost, a partner, a companion, someone to build a life with. And I think that woman in your house is falling for you just as hard as you're falling for her. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" That evening, Jacob came in from the barn earlier than usual, found Constance in the kitchen kneading bread, flour dusting her cheeks, her sleeves rolled up, humming softly to herself, and something in his chest cracked wide open. "Constance," he said, and she turned, startled. "Jacob, is everything all right?" He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just in front of her. "Constance, oui," close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. "No," he said, "everything's not all right because I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop noticing every little thing you do. The way you laugh at Tommy's jokes, the way you stand on the porch in the mornings with your coffee, the way you look at me sometimes when you think I'm not paying attention, and it's driving me half crazy because you didn't come here for this, didn't come here for me." Constance's breath caught, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Jacob, let me finish," he said, his voice rough. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know you made an arrangement with Samuel, not me, and if you want to keep things the way they are, professional, distant, I'll respect that. I'll never mention this again, but if there's even a chance, even the smallest possibility, that you might feel something for me, too, then I need to know. Because I can't keep pretending I don't care about you when caring about you is the only thing that makes sense anymore." The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility, and Constance reached up with one flour-dusted hand, touching his cheek gently. "You foolish man," she whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I came here expecting companionship, partnership, a practical arrangement with a man I'd never met. But what I found was you, difficult, stubborn, wounded, and so terribly afraid to let anyone close, and somewhere along the way, between your terrible coffee and your long silences and the way you look at the mountains like they hold all the answers, I fell in love with you, completely and absolutely, and I've been too scared to say anything because I thought you still saw me as Samuel's bride, not as myself." Jacob closed his eyes, his hand coming up to cover hers on his cheek. "Samuel's bride was an idea," he said, "a woman in letters, but you, Constance Merriweather, you're real. Flesh and blood and strength and kindness, and you're the one I want, if you'll have me."
She smiled through her tears. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll have you." And he kissed her then. Gentle at first, almost tentative, then deeper, with all the loneliness and longing and hope that had been building for months. And Constance kissed him back, tasting coffee and possibility and the promise of a future neither of them had dared to imagine. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Constance laughed, a sound of pure joy. "You have flour on your face now," she said. "Worth it," Jacob replied, grinning, that rare beautiful smile she'd only glimpsed a handful of times. Completely worth it. That night, after supper, Jacob took her hand across the table, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I want to do this right," he said. "Proper. I want to court you, the way Samuel would have if he'd lived, the way you deserve. And then, if you're willing, I want to marry you. Not because of some obligation or arrangement, but because I choose you. And you choose me. I already choose you," Constance said softly. "But yes, let's do this properly. Let's build something real. Something that's ours." The next Sunday, Jacob drove her to town in the wagon, and they sat together in church, his hand finding hers during the hymns. And when Pastor William saw them, his face split into a knowing smile. After the service, half the town came up to congratulate them. Martha Yates hugging Constance tight, whispering, "I knew it would work out. Knew it from the first day I saw you." And Constance realized that this community, this strange wild place, had become home without her even noticing. On the drive back to the ranch, snow beginning to fall again, Jacob pulled the wagon to a stop on a ridge overlooking the valley. "I don't have much to offer you," he said, turning to face her. "Just a ranch that's always one disaster away from failing. A house that needs a woman's touch, and a man who's forgotten how to say pretty words. But what I can promise you is this. I will work every day to make you happy, to make you feel safe, to build a life worth living. And I will love you, Constance, with everything I have, for as long as I breathe." Constance touched his face, her eyes shining. "Jacob Brennan, I didn't travel 2,000 miles for pretty words. I came for exactly this. For honesty and partnership and a man who shows his love through actions, not empty promises. You've already given me more than you know. A purpose, a home, and a reason to believe in second chances. So yes, I'll marry you. And I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful that Samuel brought us together. Even if he had to die to do it. Jacob pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I think he'd be happy, he whispered. Seeing us like this? I think so too. Constance agreed. And then they sat there on that ridge, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the snow fall over their valley, over their ranch, over the life they were just beginning to build together. Two broken people who'd found healing in the most unexpected place, and love in the last person either of them had expected to find it with. And as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Constance knew with absolute certainty that she was finally, truly, home. And so, Constance Merriweather, who traveled 2,000 miles to marry a stranger, found something far more precious than the practical arrangement she'd been promised. She found true love with a man who needed her just as much as she needed him, proving that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as disappointments. And the best love stories are the ones we never saw coming. If you enjoyed Constance and Jacob's journey, please hit that like button. It helps more people discover these stories of courage, second chances, and unexpected romance. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another tale from the Old West, where hearts were tested by hardship, and love was built on respect, honesty, and the determination to face life's challenges together. Thank you for spending this time with me. And until next time, remember it's never too late for a new beginning.